Alright, the second part is really on the student to do, but I'm going to show you some of just a small example of how to control this ball. We're going to call this Ricky the Raccoon the ball, and he's going to make it all the way through the steps, and he's going to be able to bounce and then land over here. So that's what the student is going to be doing. Now, to animate him, you grab his control mechanism. On the control mechanism are these attributes that allow him a little bit more flexibility. Take in case squash. I'm going to highlight squash, middle mouse button, click and drag over in the viewport. So you can see I can squash him. I'm going to start him out squashed. Now if I wanted to key squash, I could right click on it and say key selected. You'll notice in the graph editor, I now have squash in there. I can also bend his tail. So maybe his tail is going to be like that, and key selected. Well, I want Ricky to land on the first step. This is a different timeline. So I want you to get used to different timelines. The first one was 24 frames per second. Now it's 60 frames per second. Can you manage that? Yes. Time is time. You just have to figure out what it feels like real time. Okay. So let's say in 20 frames, he manages to get to the first or the second step. Don't forget, he's got to be keyed over here first. Okay, so he's on the ground and he gets keyed with a Shift W. I like to work in a smaller area. It's just easier to see where I'm at. And then I'll add keyframes as I go. Okay, he makes it to the first step. Shift W. And how does he get there? Well, he probably launches himself up in the air. Shift W. Okay. Boom. Okay, when he's up in the air, what happens? You got to kind of think of what happens to the tail. Well, let's bend it. And I can right click and say key selected. Boom. When he lands, what happens? Well, his tail will probably go down. Right click, key selected. Alright, look at that. I had this weird frame. Why did I do that? I would rather keep this very clean and keep as less ticks as possible here. But I did that so you can see how to move it. Okay, if you click right here, you can see all the curves. In this case, I only want to see maybe the balls squish and bend stuff. And as I zoom in, I see these stray keyframes. I got these that are on 1, but I got this one that's not on 1. So I'm going to move it on 1. I have these. These are on 10. What's this one on? 10. Good. Alright, where's the offending keyframe? Right here. So I can choose many different ways to move this. I can hold Shift, then Control, click it, drag it, and now it's on top of the other one. I could have moved it over here if I wanted to. I think it's just much easier if I hold Shift, Control, drag it. So now that's what I like, having a less amount of keyframes keeping it as clean as possible. In this case, right here, maybe he gets a little bit like that. And when he lands, maybe he gets squashed again. Perfect. So your mission is to get him all the way over here and get him as dynamic as possible. In the case of he's a cartoon character, Ricky the Raccoon, use your imagination in his interpretation of the ball versus tail, and he's not an actual raccoon, but have fun with the character. Get him some life within him. So that is part 2, and that's all I'm going to be doing with you in part 2. It's your job as a student to figure out how to get him all the way over here. Enjoy. Oh, and when you're done, I want the play blast. I want the MB file, the everything. So in this case, you would package it up just like I showed you in Unit 1, the first part. Just like the last set of videos. So in this case, I would have first name, last name, Unit 1, ball with tail. And first name, last name, Unit 1, ball. In both of them, you're going to have AVIs. You're going to have your MB file. So in this case, I would have, here's my MB file. I would have 2 AVIs in here that give me the play blast from different angles. Now when you're all done, you could zip up the entire hot mess into one if you wanted to. Let's say these two. I could right click on it and say send to compressed zip folder. Make sure you label everything right before you do that. Alright, that is Unit 1. When you're done with Unit 1, please move on to Unit 2.